last July, I'll say at my worst, at rock bottom with my anxiety. I'd had a really bad panic attack on a camping trip on July long weekend. And it was just like lasting, it felt like for hours. It wasn't, but it felt like I was dying. And at that point, I was like, okay, something needs to change. And then, so from last July till really the new year, I started on my journey. I was starting to do yoga, really working with hypnosis, and that was helping me a lot. And then I started doing hypnosis for other people and falling in love with that career. But I kind of felt a bit like a fraud, because I had felt so much better than I did in July, but there was still this underlying anxiety and some things that I hadn't dealt with, or I thought that I had dealt with, but they were still there lingering. And I really noticed as I started to break down my walls and go on my healing journey, anything around me that was really built on a rocky foundation, like my marriage, and was kind of like built from a trauma response, things started crumbling down. And looking back, it was the best thing that could have ever happened. But in the moment, I just felt like things were crumbling around me and I was trying to keep it together. And at that point, when we'd connected, I realized that just like people are seeking out my help and my support to be seen and heard, that it's really important for me to be seen and heard by somebody, because I've never had that before.
That's really powerful. And there's like two pieces that I'm curious is like, what's that been like for you to give yourself this village of support?
Yeah. So like, you think that you're seen and heard and that you hear and see yourself. But once you do something like emotional alchemy and you're actually seen and heard by somebody like you who has the full capacity to be that support system, it's like such a game changer. And you realize that you haven't really been experiencing that up until now, And so, it just feels so good to be seen and heard.
I'm curious how that kind of impacted or created a different foundation for you in your relationships now, like outside of this container, as you take that like standard and you take that knowing and that feeling with you. Like, how does that look like for you now in your relationships? Because I'm sure that that's kind of impacted them.
Yeah. And so when we were working together, things were pretty rocky, like I had completely stepped away from my marriage and like physically moved out of my space into another space during that time. And it was scary, but having that support from you and like the other students in emotional alchemy, it was just so incredible to know that even though things were a little chaotic around me, that I had like that safety and security within myself and the safety and security within this container. And it just made things a lot more manageable and a lot more safe. And like, just to know that I'm going to be okay because I have someone in my corner, it's not often that we have someone with such capacity like you do to be in our corner. And that was like so powerful for me. But yeah, it was challenging at times when you start to like tighten up those leaky boundaries that we talked about in EA. It's like people don't always like that around you, because they've been able to walk all over those boundaries and things were easy for them. And then once you start tightening them up, it becomes uncomfortable for them and they start to push back and they're scared and, all of these things. It's like this back and forth. But if you just like stick it out, you start to build this foundation that feels really strong and really supportive. And it's actually something that can last and be more healthy, less codependent, more healthy. It's the best thing that you can do is setting those healthy boundaries and like tightening that up, because then you feel good, you feel empowered, you're not feeling resentment and all those other things, and it just becomes stronger. And yeah, it's amazing. So powerful. And it's just like having that support and an outside perspective from you. It was just like you can open your eyes to different things and realize that although it's so scary and you feel like you're losing everything, it's like sometimes you just need to let it all go, let it crumble, get rid of it all, and things will rebuild the way they're supposed to, and they'll rebuild in a much stronger way where you can feel good and feel healthy. And I don't know, it's just in the moment, it was so tough. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was really scary. I was terrified and I cried a lot of tears, but I just decided that with this support, and that's the thing, again, I've said this so many times, but having that support system, it makes like the jump a little less scary, you know? My identity was that I was anxious. I had to be perfect, you know, all of these things. And that's like a long time to have an identity. And when you start like chipping away at that and questioning it a little bit, your mind and your body start to fight back a little because they're like, no, this is safe for me. But what I really realized, and like the biggest takeaway from the whole 8 weeks, was I was never safe in an environment ever. I thought I was safe, but what it really was this like toxic, chaotic environment that I would constantly crave. Oh, I'm like getting emotional because it's so powerful. But it's like, this is actually what safety feels now. But it's like, I never really had that before. And so when you're starting to question things, it's like, but that's your mind and your body's job, right? Is to protect you, in quotations, right? But I feel safe now. But I wasn't actually safe before, even though my mind and body had tricked me into feeling safe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. Like, would you say then, like, what was some of the hardest parts of the experience for you would be like coming to that realization that like holding that, like holding the realization, like I had never been safe my whole life, and then having to go through probably the necessary releasing and being with those pieces that would help you be in this place right now where you're like, I do feel safe. Like I finally feel safe in my body and myself, in my environment, in my relationships. Am I like interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, I think it's like sitting in a space where you can really like be honest with yourself is the hardest part, but it's also the best part, right? Like, it's, you have to feel something uncomfortable to heal it, you know, and like long-term gain. And also I think too, the hardest part was like owning up to my shit, you know, like sacred self responsibility, because that's not easy either. It's always easier to blame the other person and say, like, oh, you know, it's your fault that our marriage is this, but it's not. Like, I had plenty to do with it. And really sitting down and holding up that mirror to yourself and saying, you know, I've had a part in this. And, you know, and this is where I had a part in it. And, you know, I was coming from a place of, you know, trauma response. And so it's okay. It's not bad. It's just holding up that mirror and accepting that now I'm going to do something different moving forward. But
Yeah. So would you say that that was also like your most liberating part of the program, or would you say that there was, or the experience, or would you say like when you really ground into it and you feel into like your experience over the 8 weeks together that like maybe there was another piece for you that was like really liberating, or was it kind of
it's so interconnected, you know, but now that I think back, like 2 weeks, it's like starting to just become my new normal. And so it's like hard to think back to exactly like all of these individual pieces, but that's just it. It's like individual puzzle pieces and it all just starts to come together. And then you have this beautiful thing. But I think you just said it perfectly. Like, those most difficult moments were really like those moments of liberation and like such huge change. And so it's like in those super uncomfortable moments, that's what makes the hugest difference, I think. January, when we first started working together, I was very reactive and I had already started to work on that, but it like took a lot of effort for me to really like, okay, I'm feeling something here that's uncomfortable. And then I would kind of spiral down into my usual ways and it would be hard to come out of, you know? And now it's like I can have uncomfortable moments and it's not perfect because we're not striving to be perfect anymore, which we can get into after. But instead of trying to be perfect, it's just like, okay, I can be uncomfortable and I can sit with it And it's like 5 minutes and I'm good, because I can give myself what I need now rather than, you know, spiral down into something else that it isn't. So that's been a huge difference for me, is that being uncomfortable in like different emotions or different environmental things around me, it's just a lot easier and like a lot less effort needed to work through it, I guess. I said something like, I just want to be the best version of myself or something along those lines. And I think your response was, what if we stopped trying to be the best version and just stepped into being the most honest version or the most authentic version? And that was like a huge, like, eye opener. Like I see it all the time now, people saying, oh, the best version of me, be the best version of you. And it like actually drives me crazy, because I'm like, why are we messaging that, or why are we trying to do that? Because it was such a, like, I have like full body chills because it just has like stuck with me. But my whole life, like back to the identity part, the whole time from a child till, before we started, it was like love was given to me when I was perfect. When I was really good at dance, I would be rewarded and people would praise me and I'd fit in and, things would be good. And in school, I was really smart and I was perfect. And, that's where it all stemmed from. And I just carried it through because I was afraid that if I wasn't perfect, then how could I be loved, or how could I, all of those things, right? And so just like shedding those layers was a huge process. I identified as a perfectionist for decades, and it was like portrayed in my business. I became a workaholic because if I took a break, then things might slip and people would see the real me and they wouldn't like me. And like, you can see how this becomes such a like toxic, self-abusive conversation in your head. And that's what I was doing. I was self-abusing myself and like putting these crazy expectations that I would never be able to maintain or fulfill. And so, of course, at some point I would crack or break. And that's what happened in July. And that's why I had a panic attack, because I just couldn't keep up this charade anymore of being so perfect. Like that word honest self just meant so many things for me. It was like, be honest with people when you can't do something. Like, don't commit to something that you can't do because you think they're not going to like you because you said no, or you're not the good girl because you said no. And it's like, that was just the starting point and the momentum for me to really like start tightening up those boundaries and speaking my truth and being unapologetic. And yeah, I don't know. It just was kind of like a whirlwind from that moment on when you said that. It was like such a simple statement from you. And then it was just like, that was the momentum I needed, I guess. And I think it was so pivotal too, as well, because I think you just saying that was like subliminally giving me the permission to like take a step out of that persona of perfectionism and like really just, give honest a chance instead of best, like just see what happens. And it was like this permission, and it like felt so good. I think like I remember in that moment, like hearing that, I like felt it in my body. Mm-hmm. And it was like, that was like a moment where my body was like, yes, this feels good. And then it was just that pivotal moment and the momentum. It was just like a weight had been lifted, like in my body, and I was so focused on like my anxieties in my mind, and like I knew different, like I knew it's in our body, but I never really, I was too distracted before to like really listen to my body, and so that's what I loved about this program, where you were like, how are you feeling in your body? Like the first week I was like feeling a certain way. I'm like, okay, well, she's going to ask me how I'm feeling in my body, so I need to like take note, but it was like building a habit. And now I do it all the time. I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel good. Like I know what it feels to feel good. And I know what it feels like to feel bad. And I don't like this. So I need to. And so that's just, oh, it's so good and so powerful to like really be so connected to your body. That's what I love about the program too. It's like you create such a safe space, but you also create a space where we can't really like run away from our shit, like, because when it's something's unsafe, you want to run and be like, no, I'm good. I'm feeling good. And you're like, okay, no, how are you really feeling? And then not we're forced, but we're challenged to explore it a little bit deeper. Whereas like by ourselves, we would just be like, okay, yeah, I'm totally fine and move on when we're not really fine. But it's like, I love this space for that because there's a bit of a challenge there that really allows us to like dig a little deeper when we really need to, you know? Yeah. And that's the whole purpose of like seeking out support, right? Because what you're doing alone isn't quite enough at that time. Like you need that support, you need that challenge and that little bit of pushback to like question some of the beliefs that are going through your mind or things that aren't serving you anymore, to question those, because that's the only way you can heal from them.
I'm curious what you would say to another, healer or support, like somebody that's a guide, somebody that is a space holder, somebody that is a facilitator who maybe feels a little ashamed of like receiving support and allowing themselves to like take off their coach hat, take off their healer hat and receive that support themselves.
Oh, like I have like goosebumps when I just like was thinking about what I was going to just say. But it's like my business and the way that I coach and support my clients now is like, it's just like I have like full body chills because like I thought I was doing a good job before, but like it is a game changer now. Like my clients are just like telling me I feel so seen and heard and supported because I now have the capacity to see and hear and support them so much better. And it's so interesting because I'm attracting so many people that have such similar things that are going on that I was experiencing. And so now I get to really use my life experience and really like understand and guide them along. And it just, its sessions are so much more powerful now in my business. Like the momentum is just really taking off. And I'm just working with the clients that I really want to be working with. And it's crazy. And I think too, how you mentioned like that anxiousness in your body and dissociating when you haven't dealt with your own things. It's like so often I would feel really shaky or like different things throughout a session. And I would think it was my own. And now that I'm so in tune with my body, like during a session, sometimes like I had like a splitting headache, like instantly. And I was like, what the heck? And then I was like, okay, wait a minute. This isn't mine. This is theirs. And I just asked, like, are you feeling like you are like releasing trauma through your, like, do you have a headache? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, okay, this isn't mine. This is theirs. But it's like being able to differentiate that as a healer is so important. And being able to help them release it without absorbing it is like so, so important. And I was never able to be so in tune with my body as I am now. And so that's been amazing too. Mentioned this, it was so, so scary. It was such a tough experience to leave my home and to move into a different space temporarily. But it created the space that we both needed. And it was such a great experience. There was definitely like ups and downs for sure. Let's be real. But ultimately, things have been so much better. I guess we just finished EA like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't even, maybe 3 weeks ago. But like the last 2 weeks have been incredible. Like the communication is there from both parties. There's like healthy boundaries that I've implemented, but now he feels safe to implement for me because I was crossing boundaries as well too, and being codependent and all these things that I have responsibility for. And things are good. It's, of course, I have that in the back of my mind of like, okay, because that trauma response comes back where you're like, okay, I'm waiting for the ball to drop. But then I'm able to like really catch myself quickly and be like, no, you deserve this happiness. You're experiencing joy. This is what you've wanted. And just experience it, like enjoy this, dance in the living room and just take it all in. And so it's been really good. Really, really, really good. And I think that's why it's so important to like really work on that inner safety and security so you can fully receive that and feel safe to do so. Because for me, it's like, okay, because I can't control him. And that was like a huge thing for me. I needed to control everything around me because then I would be safe. But that's not a healthy way. That's codependency. And it's like, now that I feel safe in my body, now that I take myself on dates every Friday to the movie, it's like, if he doesn't have the capacity to be my support system, well, I'll be okay. I'll take myself on dates and, it'll suck for sure. And I'll have that moment of feeling sad. And I'm able to feel that and I deserve to feel that way. But it's like, but I will be okay. Things will be okay. It's like I feel like I'm in the twilight zone, like talking like this, because I'm like, who is this person still? Like, there's still moments of like, is this really me saying all these things and like really actually feeling it? Like saying it is one thing, right? But like actually feeling it to be true and like experiencing it, it's like, what? I've really noticed in my life, like with my business, I do like a few different things, you know, like I still do like somatic like body treatments and like stuff like that, and I teach yoga and I do hypnosis. And it's like I would always feel guilty or feeling like people would think that I was like flitty or that I was like doing this and that. But it's like that's what feels good for me, like to really listen to myself and be like, this month I really want to do more body treatments for people, or I'm feeling more called to like do physical treatments with people, and like really listening to myself and not really worrying about like what other people are thinking. And again, that's like reflected my business because I'm like calling in the people that are needing it. It's like I know that people are needing it and they're like flocking towards it, and it's just been so good. And so like little things like that that seem little, but they're actually so big, where it's just like, again, listening to myself and being like, this feels good for me, so I'm going to do it and not question it and not worry about other people around me, and just like living really honestly and like unapologetically, I guess. And like my whole life, I felt like everything was like in fast forward mode. I don't know. Anybody with anxiety will be like, oh my gosh, that is so accurate. But it's like, I just felt like everything was speeding by. I was like moving in such a fast speed. And since us working together, I just feel like things have slowed down. And it's not even slow, it's just normal speed. But for me, it feels extra slow because I'm like readjusting to what like normal is for me and what regulated feels like and what safety feels like. But things are just slower and I get to enjoy things. And I'm like really able to like take things in around me and be more intuitive. And I think too, another thing that I've noticed, and I think Abby had also mentioned this in one of our sessions, but it's like I used to like pull oracle cards every day and like search for the answers like from outside of me. And like I don't think I've like picked up my deck since we started working together, because it's like I don't need to find an answer in a card. Like they're great, you know, like I love oracle cards and tarot, like it's great. But it's like no, I'm not relying on it to like find this answer and like to feel good about myself anymore, you know? And like, that's really powerful. Like, since starting working with you in January till now, I've lost 25 pounds. And like, it's not about the weight. And it's like, I haven't done anything different. It just like dawned on me the other day when I like went to put on a shirt that like has been in the back of my closet for like 5 years. And I was like, what the heck? And like people have been commenting, but I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like I'm losing weight. But like I haven't increased like doing yoga. I haven't really changed anything. But like just releasing the emotional baggage, like the weight emotionally has like just like I've lost weight physically just from losing the emotional weight. It is insane. But I think it's worth mentioning because so many people struggle with this. And it's like, why am I stuck here? Or like, why do I feel? But it's like, it's connected. Like your emotional well-being and your physical well-being, it's so connected. And when I realized that that happened, I was like, holy shit, I need to message you and be like, what is going on? The energy and like, yeah, the vitality. And like, I feel healthy, like as a whole, holistically, I feel so healthy, like the most healthy I've ever been. Like having the motivation, and I say motivation, like the internal motivation or like the energy to like do these things that I want to do in my business rather than feeling lethargic. And by the time my partner gets home from work, I'm like ready to go to bed because I'm so tired. And my kids, you know, wanting to go out and play. And I'm like, oh, just, you know, let's hang out and watch a show, you know, like things like that. And they seem so small, but those are like, that's the medicine, you know, like spending time with your kids and having energy to spend time with your spouse and go for a walk when it's nice. Like it's so important. And it just like really gives you that momentum and that healthy cycle, because when you have more energy, you do more things, and then you sleep better and you eat better. And it's, it's also connected. Just feel like a different person in such a good way. I just feel really healthy, and I feel free, like freedom, Like we often think of like freedom as like financial freedom or, time, but it's like to like feel free, to just breathe and to, I don't know, just have this weight lifted is so, so freeing. When we invest in something like this, like I'll speak for me, when I invest in something like this, like I've invested in courses that were, not everything that they said they were going to be, or maybe I wasn't in a space to receive it the way that I had, or I had these expectations. We've all wasted money on courses and online coaching, and like we've all been there. And so it was never you that I was questioning. It was me, right? It was like, am I going to invest in this and follow through on it? And I was like questioning myself. But just like how you said, like, you wanted this to be like a sacred yes for me. Like you really wanted it to feel good for me to do this. And like in that moment, I just knew that it was what I needed to do. And so I would just tell her, like, don't question yourself. Don't judge yourself, shame yourself, guilt yourself for past courses and things that you didn't follow through on. But just really come into this with like no expectations. Like this is so much different than any other course, right? Like there's so many courses where you have like tangible outcomes, and like in order to finish, you have to get this, this, and this. And this is just such a different experience. And so, yeah, I wouldn't change anything. Everything was perfect, but I would just tell myself, like, do it, girl. You know what? Like, it's normal. Like, that's your body's job. It's protecting you. It feels uncomfortable. And it's like just owning that and being like, my body's doing what it's supposed to. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to be fearful, but do it anyway, And like, it has, this, but like, you have helped me change my life, and I'm forever grateful. And I'm not going to tear up, but I am. But it's like, yeah. And even if you are on a healing journey and you're like, I'm doing really good, I'm feeling really good, it's like there's always more room to like explore these things. And this is just like next level, Yeah, just next level. And so if it feels like you're wanting to do this, then you should definitely do it, because it's amazing. It's like just being in a safe space where you're seen and heard is like so powerful. And if you've never really experienced it, it's like something that you need to experience, because it's incredible.